There was burning. From orbit, the planet looked like a jewel cracked and bleeding. Cities that had stood for 10,000 years were now nothing but smoke and fire. The twin suns that had given life to this world now watched its death with cold, distant light. High Priestess stood at the window of her underground bunker and watched another explosion bloom on the horizon. Her pale blue skin was covered in dust and dried blood. Her ceremonial robes were torn. She had not slept in 4 days. Behind her, the last members of the council argued in desperate whispers. Some wanted to surrender. Others wanted to fight to the last breath. None of them had any real hope left. The Dominion had come 3 weeks ago. Their ships had blocked out the stars like a swarm of metal locusts. They did not come to conquer. They did not come to rule. They came to harvest. They used other species for biological resources. They would strip this world of every living thing, process the population in their factory ships, and move on to the next victim. They had sent messages to the Galactic Concord, the great alliance of spacefaring civilizations that was supposed to keep peace in the galaxy. The Concord had responded with sympathy and prayers. They had voted to remain neutral. They did not want to anger the had begged. She had offered everything her people had. The Conquered had expressed deep concern and done nothing. Now her people were dying by the millions, and no one in the galaxy seemed to care. An old priest named Father approached her slowly. His robes were as ruined as hers, but his eyes still held a spark of something. Not hope exactly, something stranger. "There is one more option," he said quietly. "The ancient beacon." Turn to look at him. That is a legend, a story we tell children. It is real. It sits in the deepest vault of the great temple. It has been there since before our recorded history. His voice dropped even lower. It broadcasts on frequencies that no modern species uses. It sends a message to parts of space that the Conquered has never explored. And what good would that do? If there is anyone out there, they would be too primitive to help us, or too far away to arrive in time. Shook his head slowly. The ancient texts say the beacon calls to those who answer the cries of strangers. I do not know if anyone will hear. I do not know if anyone will come, but we have tried everything else. Looked back at the burning horizon. Another city died as she watched. She thought of the children in the refugee camps. She thought of the families being loaded onto transport ships, never to be seen again. She thought of her own daughter, killed in the first wave of bombardment. "Show me this beacon," she said. The vault was deep beneath the temple, protected by doors that had not been opened in 1,000 years. The beacon itself was a simple thing. A metal sphere covered in symbols that no living could read, showed her how to activate it. "I do not know what to say," admitted. "Say the truth, say what we need." Pressed her hand to the cold metal and spoke. She described the attack. She gave coordinates. She transmitted images of the destruction of the ships of her people fleeing through burning streets. She did not beg. She simply told the truth of what was happening and asked if anyone could help. The beacon hummed. The message flew outward into the dark. 400 light-years away, the signal crossed into space that no conquered ship had ever entered. It passed dead systems and empty void. It traveled for hours at the speed of light until it reached a small yellow star with 8 planets. The third planet was called Earth. In the city in a building that overlooked the sea, Admiral Park was working late. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had served in the solar conflicts 20 years ago, when the nations of Earth had finally stopped fighting each other and united under one government. Now he commanded the combined fleet, the military force that protected humanity's colonies across 12 star systems. His office was quiet. Most of his staff had gone home. Only Lieutenant remained, monitoring the communication systems as she always did during the night shift. She was young and eager, with a sharp mind and a tendency to notice things others missed. "Admiral," she said suddenly, "I am picking up something strange." Park looked up from his reports. Strange how. It is a signal, very old frequency, not from any known source. She worked her console quickly. It is. It is a distress call, sir, with coordinates and visual data. Put it on screen. The main display flickered to life. Park watched as images appeared. Alien cities burning. Alien people running in terror. Ships in orbit raining fire down on a helpless world. The message was garbled, but the meaning was clear. Someone was dying and asking for help. Where is this coming from? Park asked quietly. 400 light-years from Earth. Outside conquered space. We would have to travel through unknown territory to reach them. Paused. Sir, we have no treaties with these people. We have no obligations. The conquered would probably tell us to stay out of it. Park stood and walked closer to the screen. He watched a building collapse. He watched people scream and run. He watched children being carried through smoke and fire. He thought of his grandmother. She had survived the last war on Earth, when nuclear weapons had killed 2 billion people in a single year. She had told him stories of those days. Stories of horror, but also stories of strangers who helped each other. People who shared food with enemies. Soldiers who carried wounded civilians to safety. Humanity at its worst, but also humanity at its best. The conquered can say what they want, Park said slowly. We are not members of the conquered, we make our own choices. He turned to, wake the fleet, all of it, every ship, every soldier, every pilot. I want us ready to move in 6 hours. Stared at him. All of it, sir. That is over 300 ships. We would be leaving our own systems nearly undefended. I know. Park looked back at the screen, at the burning world, at the people who had cried out for help and been ignored by everyone who heard them. Someone has to answer. Someone has to show this galaxy that not everyone looks away when innocents suffer. He picked up his communicator. Get me the fleet commanders. We have work to do. 6 hours later, the largest military force Earth had ever assembled began to move toward the stars. 312 ships, 40,000 soldiers, pilots and medics and engineers, all of them heading toward a world they had never seen, to help people they had never met because someone had asked. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity did not ignore cries for help. They had stopped counting the dead. There were too many. The numbers had become meaningless. Entire cities existed now only as names in old records. The bombardment had continued for weeks without pause. Their ground troops had landed in the capital 3 days ago. The end was coming. High Priestess sat alone in her bunker. Father had died yesterday, killed by a falling beam when a bomb struck the temple above them. Most of the council was dead or captured. The few soldiers who remained were fighting in the streets, buying time for refugees to hide in underground tunnels that would become their tombs. No one had answered the beacon. Of course, no one had answered. The galaxy did not work that way. The strong did what they wanted. The weak suffered and died. That was the only truth that mattered. Held her ceremonial blade in her hands. It was an ancient thing, passed down through generations of high priestesses. Tradition demanded that she use it on herself rather than be taken by enemies. She had always thought of this tradition as barbaric. Now she understood it. Death was better than what they would do to her. She pressed the blade against her wrist and closed her eyes. Then the sky tore open. The sound was like nothing anyone on the planet had ever heard. A roar that shook the ground and rattled the walls. Dropped her blade and ran to the bunker's single window, a narrow slit that looked up at the smoke-filled sky. Ships were appearing. Not ships. These were different. Smaller, faster, more numerous. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly into orbit, dozens at a time, forming into battle formations with perfect precision. More and more kept coming. 100 ships, 200, 300. The sky filled with them until the fleet looked small by comparison. On the bridge of the Unbreakable, Admiral Park studied the tactical display with calm eyes. His ship was the largest in the fleet, a dreadnought-class carrier that held 50 fighter craft and enough firepower to crack a small moon. Around him, his crew worked in focused silence. Commander stood at the tactical station. She was a veteran of the solar conflicts, a woman who had seen more combat than most people could imagine. Her face showed no emotion as she analyzed the enemy positions. 67 capital ships, she reported, about 200 support vessels, troop transports in low orbit, ground forces already deployed. She looked up at the admiral. They were not expecting us. Their formation is spread out. They were focused on the bombardment, not on defending against a fleet attack. Captain manned the weapons station. He was younger than the others, but his hands were steady and his mind was sharp. He had trained for this kind of battle his entire career. Their ships are big, observed. Heavy armor, heavy guns, but slow. They fight like bullies who have never faced a real enemy. Park nodded slowly. He had studied thee on the journey here, reading every scrap of intelligence the fleet's computers could find. The Dominion had conquered 47 species across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. They were feared everywhere they went. No one challenged them. No one except humanity. Open a channel, Park ordered. All frequencies. I want everyone in this system to hear this. Lieutenant worked her console. Channel open, sir. Park stood straight and spoke clearly. His voice would be translated and broadcast to every ship, every soldier, every survivor on the planet below. This is Admiral Park of Earth's combined fleet. You are attacking a civilian population. You are killing innocent people. This stops now. He paused to let the words sink in. You have one chance to withdraw your forces and leave this system. If you refuse, we will destroy you. There will be no negotiations. There will be no second warning. Choose. The response came quickly. A commander appeared on the. He was a massive creature, covered in thick gray hide and bony plates. His eyes were small and cruel. When he spoke, his voice was a low rumble that the translator rendered as words dripping with contempt. Humans, we know of you, small creatures from a small world. You should have stayed in your corner of the galaxy. The commander made a sound that might have been laughter. You threaten us with this little fleet. We have conquered species far greater than yours. We will add your worlds to our harvest after we finish here. Leave now and we might let some of you live. Park's expression did not change. I see you have made your choice. You cannot fight us. You do not know how. Your species is young and weak. You have never faced true war. Something flickered in Park's eyes then, something cold and hard. We have done nothing but war, he said quietly. For 10,000 years we killed each other. We burned our own cities. We invented weapons that could destroy worlds. We nearly wiped ourselves out more times than you can count. He leaned forward slightly. You think you know war. You are children playing with toys. We are the species that turned killing into a science. He cut the channel and turned to Commander. All ships, attack formation Delta. Concentrate fire on their command vessels first. I want their leadership dead before they understand what is happening. Smiled grimly, with pleasure, Admiral. The battle began. Human ships moved like nothing they had ever seen. They did not form static lines. They did not exchange volleys at long range. They swarmed and flanked and struck from every angle at once. Fighter craft poured out of carrier bays, small and fast, drawing fire away from the capital ships while bomber squadrons made attack runs on enemy engines. They tried to respond. They were not cowards, whatever else they were. They fought back with everything they had, but they were too slow, too rigid, too used to enemies who fought by predictable rules. Humanity had no rules. Humanity had only 10,000 years of practice killing each other. Within the first hour, they lost 12 capital ships. Their formation broke apart as individual captains tried to respond to threats coming from every direction. Human missiles found their engines. Human guns punched through their armor. Human pilots flew with a skill and courage that they could not match. On the planet below, watched the sky light up with explosions. Ships were falling. Burning wreckage streaked through the atmosphere like shooting stars. The bombardment had stopped completely as the enemy fleet fought for its own survival. Around her, soldiers and civilians emerged from hiding places to watch. None of them could believe what they were seeing. Someone had come. Someone had actually come. "Who are they?" one soldier asked, his voice shaking. Shook her head slowly. "I do not know, but whoever they are dying for us." She watched another ship explode. "And they are winning." In orbit, the Unbreakable shuddered as enemy fire struck its shields. Admiral Park gripped his command chair but did not flinch. Damage report. Shields holding at 60%. Minor hull breaches on decks 7 and 8. No casualties. Commander checked her display. Enemy command ship is trying to retreat. Should we let them go? Park considered for a moment. Then he shook his head. No, their commander threatened to harvest our worlds. He needs to understand that was a mistake. He looked at Captain. Main guns, full power. Show them what happens to those who threaten Earth. The Unbreakable's main cannons fired. The command ship ceased to exist. The Battle of Twin Suns would be remembered for 1,000 years. Galactic conquered observers watched from a safe distance as they always did. They recorded everything with their advanced sensors. They took careful notes. They did not intervene. That was not their way. But even these cold, neutral watchers could not hide their shock at what they witnessed. The humans fought like demons. Lieutenant Commander Shin led the fighter squadrons. She was small and quiet, the kind of person you might overlook in a crowd. But in a cockpit, she became something else. Her voice stayed calm and steady over the communication channels even as chaos erupted around her. "Blue Squadron, break left. Red Squadron, follow me through the gap in their formation. We are going for the carrier." Her fighter screamed through space, dodging enemy fire with movements that should have been impossible. Behind her, dozens of pilots followed. They trusted her completely. She had trained most of them herself. The carrier was huge, a massive ship that held thousands of troops and hundreds of landing craft. It was trying to retreat, pulling back from the planet to escape the slaughter. Was not going to let it leave. "Target the engine section. Concentrated fire on my mark." She watched her targeting display, waiting for the perfect moment. The carrier's shields flickered as it tried to power its faster-than-light drive. Now. 30 fighters fired at once. Their missiles struck the engine section in a perfect cluster. The carrier shuddered, its drive failing. Secondary explosions rippled along its hull. "Engine destroyed, they are dead in space." Allowed herself a small smile. "All squadrons move to next target, we still have work to do." On the Unbreakable, Captain coordinated the fleet's firepower with the focus of an artist creating a masterpiece. His fingers danced across his console, directing dozens of ships, assigning targets, managing ammunition reserves. Every shot had to count. "Cruiser Group 3, adjust firing solution by 2 degrees. You are hitting their armor at the wrong angle." He studied the display as they, "Better. Now concentrate on the weak point behind their main guns." The cruisers fired together. The enemy ship broke apart. Was already looking at the next target. This was what he had trained for his entire life. Not just the mechanics of weapon systems, but the art of fleet combat. Understanding how ships moved, how shields worked, where every enemy design had weaknesses. He knew the ships now. He had learned their secrets in the first hour of battle. Now he was using that knowledge to tear them apart. "Admiral," he said without looking up, "recommend we push the destroyers forward to cut off their escape route. They are trying to form up near the outer planet." Park nodded. "Do it." The destroyers moved like wolves surrounding wounded prey. The ships that tried to run found human vessels waiting for them. Those that stood and fought found themselves outnumbered as the human fleet reformed around them. Commander watched the battle unfold with satisfaction. They were good at terrorizing weaker species. They were not prepared for an enemy that fought back with skill and fury. Their morale is breaking, she observed. I am detecting surrender signals from several smaller vessels. Park considered this. Accept their surrender, disable their weapons and engines, but do not destroy them. We are not here to slaughter anyone. We are here to stop a genocide. Some might say they deserve to be slaughtered, said quietly. Perhaps they do, but we are better than that. We have to be. Park's voice was firm. Take prisoners, treat them well. Let the galaxy see that humans know mercy as well as war. The battle continued for another 5 hours. They fought hard, but it was hopeless. Human ships were faster, human tactics were superior, and human determination never wavered. One by one, the vessels fell, destroyed or disabled or surrendered. By the 6th hour, it was over. The sky above them was clear of enemy ships for the first time in weeks. Wreckage drifted in orbit, cooling metal and frozen bodies. The twin suns shone down on a world that had expected to die but had somehow survived. The cost had been real. 11 human ships were destroyed. 43 were damaged, some badly. 2,400 soldiers, pilots, and crew members had given their lives. Their names were already being recorded, their families already being. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the Unbreakable and looked at the planet below. He could see the scars of bombardment even from orbit. Burned cities, cratered landscapes, a world that had suffered terribly. But the people were still alive. The harvest would not happen. Because of what his fleet had done, millions of innocent beings would see tomorrow. Begin landing operations, he ordered. Medical teams first, then engineering corps, then food and supplies. He turned to his crew. We did not come here just to fight, we came here to help. The war is over. Now the real work begins. Began descending through the atmosphere. Human soldiers who had fought like warriors an hour ago now carried medical supplies instead of weapons. Engineers prepared to restore power and water to shattered cities. Cooks set up field kitchens to feed refugees. On the surface, stood in the ruins of her capital and watched the strange ships land. Alien creatures emerged. They were smaller than she expected, soft-looking with no claws or armor. They did not look like warriors at all. But they had just destroyed the most feared military force in the galaxy. One of them approached her. It was a young female based on the voice, though found it hard to tell these humans apart. The alien held up a small device that translated her words. High Priestess, I am Medic Corporal. We are here to help. Can you show me where your wounded are? Stared at her for a long moment. This creature had traveled 400 light years to fight and die for strangers, and now she was asking how to help more. Why? Asked. It was the only word she could manage. Looked confused. Why what? Why did you come? Why did you fight for us? Why are you helping us? The young human thought about this. Then she shrugged, a gesture did not understand but somehow found comforting. Because you needed help, said simply, and we could give it. That is enough reason, is it not? She smiled and held out her hand. After a moment, took it. Around them, humans and began working together for the first time. Enemies lay dead in orbit. But on the ground, something new was being born, something that might change the galaxy forever. 3 weeks after the battle, the Galactic Concord was in chaos. Emergency meetings convened on a dozen worlds. Ambassadors shouted at each other across conference tables. Intelligence agencies scrambled to gather information about the humans. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. What did this mean? What would happen next? The humans had done the impossible. They had not just defeated the Dominion in battle. They had humiliated them. 40 of their capital ships destroyed. Their fleet scattered and running. Their commander killed. And worst of all, the humans had done it without asking for anything in return. This was not how the galaxy worked. Power was traded. Favors were bought and sold. When someone helped you, they expected payment. Always. But the humans had asked for nothing. They had simply appeared, fought, won, and then started helping the survivors. It made no sense. It frightened people more than the battle itself had. Ambassador No addressed the conquered assembly via quantum link. He was an old man with a weathered face and patient eyes. He had spent 40 years in diplomatic service, negotiating treaties and managing crises. He had never faced anything like this. "You demand explanations," he said calmly. "Very well, I will explain." The assembly fell silent. Dozens of species watched through their screens, waiting. "We received a distress call. A species we had never met was being slaughtered. Their government, your conquered, refused to help them. We decided that was unacceptable." "But why?" demanded the ambassador, a tall creature who represented one of the conquered's founding species. "You had no treaty with no trade agreements, no strategic interest in their system. Why would you sacrifice your ships and soldiers for them?" Smiled slightly. "Because it was the right thing to do." "That is not an answer. There is always a deeper motivation. What do you want from us?" "Nothing." The assembly erupted in confused shouting, waited for quiet before continuing. "I understand this is difficult for you to believe. Your civilization has existed for millions of years. You have developed complex systems of alliance and exchange. Everything has a price. Everything is negotiated." He paused. "Humans are different. We are a young species. We have only been among the stars for 3 centuries, but we are old in other ways. We spent 10,000 years learning hard lessons about who we are and who we want to be." He leaned forward slightly. "We learned that standing by while innocents die makes you guilty of their deaths. We learned that power without compassion is worthless. We learned that the measure of a civilization is not its technology or its wealth, but how it treats those who cannot help themselves." The ambassador made a dismissive gesture. "Pretty words, but words mean nothing. Actions reveal truth." "Then let our actions speak. We fought and died for strangers. We are now rebuilding their world without payment. We will protect them from future threats without asking for tribute." Straightened. "If innocents call for help and we can answer, we will answer. Every time. That is humanity's promise to this galaxy. Believe it or do not. We do not require your belief." He ended the transmission. The assembly descended into chaos once again. On the reconstruction continued. Officer O walked through what had once been a refugee camp and was now becoming a small city. Human engineers had restored power to the region. Clean water flowed again. Medical facilities operated around the clock, treating both physical wounds and psychological trauma. She found High Priestess standing at the edge of a construction site, watching humans and work side by side to clear rubble. "You look tired," said. Turned to face her. The High Priestess looked different than she had 3 weeks ago. Some of the weight had lifted from her shoulders. Some of the despair had faded from her eyes. She still looked exhausted, but there was hope there now. "I cannot sleep," admitted. "Every time I close my eyes, I see the bombing, I hear the screams, I smell the smoke." She shook her head. "Your doctors tell me this is normal, that the memories will fade with time. I hope they are right." Nodded. "They are. I have seen it before. My grandmother survived the last war on Earth. She had nightmares for years afterward, but they did fade, and she lived a good life despite them." "Tell me about this last war." Was quiet for a moment. This was not easy to talk about. Humans did not often discuss this period with outsiders, but deserved the truth. 80 years ago, humanity almost destroyed itself. Our nations had built weapons capable of ending all life on our planet, and we used them. She swallowed. 2 billion people died in a single year. Cities that had stood for centuries became ash in seconds. The air was poisoned. The water was poisoned. We came within a hair of extinction. Stared at her. "How did you survive?" "We chose to. The survivors looked at what we had done and decided we had to change. We unified our governments. We banned the worst weapons. We rebuilt our civilization from the ground up, this time with different values." Looked at the construction site. We promised ourselves that we would never again stand by while innocents suffered, that we would use our power to protect, not to destroy. And that is why you came here, because of this promise. Yes, when Admiral Park saw your distress call, he could not look away. None of us could. We knew what it felt like to watch your world burn. We could not let it happen to someone else. Was silent for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised. She bowed deeply, a gesture of profound respect in culture. My people owe you a debt we can never repay. Reached out and gently raised her back up. There is no debt. We did not help you for payment. We helped you because you are people and people should help each other. That is all. But we must do something. We cannot simply accept this gift without returning anything. Smiled, then pass it on. Someday someone else will need help. When that day comes, answer their call. That is the only payment we want. Considered this, then she nodded slowly. I understand, and I promise you we will. We'll remember what you did here. We will remember and we will pass it on. That night the first formal ceremony was held. Human and officials gathered in a tent erected where the council chamber had once stood. Admiral Park attended, along with his senior staff. High Priestess spoke for her people. We were alone, she said. We cried out for help and the galaxy turned away. Then strangers came from the darkness. They did not know us. They owed us nothing. But they came anyway and they saved us. She turned to face Admiral Park. On behalf of the Commonwealth, I offer our friendship. Not as payment for what you have done, but because we want to stand beside you. Because you have shown us what a civilization can be when it chooses courage over fear, compassion over indifference. Park stepped forward. His face was tired but proud. Earth accepts your friendship, and we offer ours in return. From this day forward, we'll never face darkness alone. Neither will humanity. We will stand together. They clasped hands, human, and under the light of twin suns. Across the galaxy, observers watched this ceremony with varying degrees of confusion, fear, and wonder. Something had changed, something fundamental. The old rules were being rewritten. And humanity was holding the pen. 1 year passed. The galaxy had changed more in those 12 months than it had in the previous 1,000 years. The old order was crumbling. Something new was rising from its ruins. The Dominion collapsed first. News of their defeat at Twin Suns spread to every world they had conquered. Species that had been enslaved for generations heard that the invincible had been broken by a young species from an unknown corner of the galaxy. Hope sparked in hearts that had forgotten what hope felt like. The rebellions began within weeks. On one world, factory workers sabotaged the processing plants where their children were being harvested. On another, soldiers who had been forced to serve in the military turned their weapons against their masters. On a dozen more, populations simply refused to obey anymore. They tried to respond, but their fleet was shattered and their leadership was dead. They could not hold their empire together. Within 6 months, the Dominion had fragmented into 100 pieces. Former slave species claimed their freedom. The harvest ended forever. The Galactic Conquered struggled to understand what was happening. Their system of careful neutrality had kept peace for millions of years. Now it seemed obsolete. Species that had once accepted Conquered protection began asking uncomfortable questions. Why had the Conquered refused to help them? Why had they watched a genocide and done nothing? More importantly, why had the humans been willing to die for strangers when the Conquered was not? One by one, worlds began reaching out to Earth. Not to the Conquered, but directly to humanity. They wanted alliances. They wanted friendship. They wanted to be part of whatever the humans were building. Admiral Park retired from active service after overseeing the construction of 12 new fleet stations throughout Allied space. His health had suffered during the campaign, and his doctors insisted he slow down. He accepted their advice with grace. He returned to Earth and spent his final years teaching at the Naval Academy in Young cadets sat in his classroom and listened to the old man talk about duty and sacrifice and the weight of command. Power means nothing if you lack the will to use it for good, he told them. Any fool can destroy, any tyrant can conquer. The hard thing, the noble thing, is to protect, to stand between innocents and those who would harm them. That is what our fleet exists for. That is what you must remember. Commander took command of the Unbreakable. The great ship remained the flagship of what was now called the Allied Fleet, a growing force that combined human vessels with ships from a dozen other species. She led with the same calm determination that had carried her through the Battle of Twin Suns. Captain became the first human to train alien weapons officers at the new military academy on the. His students came from species across the galaxy, all of them eager to learn the tactics that had defeated the. He taught them not just how to fight, but why to fight. Weapons are tools, he explained to each new class. They have no morality of their own. The morality comes from the one who wields them. You can use a gun to murder or to protect. The choice is yours. Always remember that. Lieutenant Commander Shin's fighter tactics became standard training across 40 worlds. She wrote manuals and created simulations, and personally trained hundreds of pilots. Her calm voice, the one that had guided squadrons through the chaos of battle, became familiar to warriors across the galaxy. Medic Corporal, who had been one of the first to land on the surface, left military service and founded an organization dedicated to providing medical care during crises. Her teams deployed wherever there was suffering, regardless of politics or boundaries. When asked why, she always gave the same answer. Because that is what we do. That is what humans do. Officer O became Earth's first ambassador to the galaxy at large. She established embassies on 100 worlds and negotiated treaties with dozens of species. Her skill and compassion made her legendary among diplomats throughout known space. When reporters asked her to describe humanity's role in the new galactic order, she smiled thoughtfully before answering. We are not conquerors, we have no interest in empire, we are not saviors either, we do not believe we are better than anyone else. She paused. We are just neighbors, neighbors who heard a cry for help and came running, and we will keep coming. As long as there are those who need us, we will be there. High Priestess lived to see her world fully rebuilt. The scars of bombardment faded over the years. New cities rose where old ones had fallen. Children born after the battle grew up in peace, learning about the dark times only through history lessons. She traveled to Earth once, near the end of her life. She walked through and saw the building where Admiral Park had made his decision to save her people. She visited the memorial that honored the human soldiers who had died in the Battle of Twin Suns. She read their names, 2,400 of them, carved in stone. Then she went to the Naval Academy and spoke to the cadets there. Her voice was old and weak, but her words carried weight. I was ready to die, she told them. I had the blade in my hand, I had given up hope, and then your people came. She looked around at the young faces watching her. You could have stayed home. You could have decided that strangers were not worth dying for. Instead, you crossed 400 light years to fight for people you had never met. She straightened despite her age, and her voice grew stronger. The galaxy is full of powerful species, species with great fleets and advanced technology, but power alone does not make a civilization great. What makes you great is what you choose to do with that power, she smiled. You chose compassion. You chose courage. You chose to answer the cries of strangers. That is why the galaxy looks to Earth now. Not because you are the strongest, but because you are the best. She died 3 months later, peaceful and content. They mourned her passing, but they also celebrated her life and the alliance she had helped build. Across the galaxy, species who had lived in fear for generations began to believe in something new. The old order, where the strong preyed on the weak and no one interfered, was dying. A new order was being born, one based on mutual protection and shared purpose. Earth stood at the center of this new order, not as a ruler but as a guardian, a promise made real, a light in the darkness. When the next distress call came, humanity answered it, and the next one, and the one after that. Each time they asked for nothing in return except a promise: help others when you can, answer the cries of strangers, pass it on. The galaxy learned that humans were strange creatures, soft and small and short-lived, but also stubborn and brave and unwilling to accept injustice. They had nearly destroyed themselves once. They had emerged from that crucible determined to be better, and they were keeping that promise. The ancient beacon that High Priestess had activated still sat in its vault on the. It was a relic now, a museum piece, but the signal it had sent still echoed through history. A cry for help, answered by strangers from the stars. Humanity's greatest legacy was not their ships or their weapons or their tactics. It was simpler than that. They had shown the galaxy that someone would answer, that no one had to face the darkness alone, that help would come. And across 1,000 worlds, beings of every species looked up at the distant light of Earth's sun and felt something they had almost forgotten how to feel: hope.